Welcome back to this segment of the Writer's Room for Run Radio, and it might fit for the Fit Cat feature as well because we're talking with Kelly Hitchcock, and we're going to talk about your book, but a lot of running and marathon training is involved too. So
That's correct.
we're going to touch on both of those, and you're also from the Ozarks, so we've got a lot in common. And we'll just kind of go to the beginning about your journey with writing and how you became a writer, or if it was always in your blood and what your process is like. Welcome.
Sure, Trina. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I was actually born in the great state of Nebraska, of all things. And I wrote my first book when I was living there and I was 6 years old. And it was a retelling and very bad illustration of The Lady and the Tramp. I wrote it on notebook paper. My mom then bound the book with twist ties from a bread bag, and I think she still has it. So
Oh my
I have
God.
always wanted to be a writer. Growing up in the Ozarks, didn't have a whole lot of local inspiration apart from Mark Twain, who we just covered over and over and over. But that was part of it. And went to college in Springfield, just down the street from you, and majored in creative writing there. My first book actually it started out as my senior project in college. So we had to have a creative writing project. I went one way and my advisor was like, I don't think this is really going to work. Went another way and they're like, yeah, this is something that you should pursue. And after college, finished that and it became my first book. That was in my 20s. I wrote my second book in my 30s. And the book that just came out, Community Klepto, released 1 week after my 40th birthday. So hopefully another decade doesn't go by before I finish another one. I know it won't because I'm halfway through one that I'm working on now. But yes, I've always wanted to be an author. I've tried out all kinds of flavors of publishing. My first book, I self-published because I kind of kept getting a refrain, and it was very new at the time. The whole Amazon author platform, when I was 25, was still very new. So I thought it would be something exciting to try. I kind of got tired of hearing from publishers the same refrain of nobody really cares about the story of a white girl from the Midwest. Got that over and over and over. And so then my second book, I got a publishing deal with a small press out of Indiana. They're not around anymore. COVID killed them off along with a lot of other small presses. And then with my third book, I'm now with a hybrid publisher. So just trying out all the different shoes of publishing.
Good. And I'm glad you're sharing that. I want people to be aware of their options and know that you don't have to stick with one way. And these days, there are ways for them all to be great, depending on your needs, their needs, and how you want your book portrayed. So
that's true. And, what works for even one book does not necessarily work for the next book that's on your list. Because I think about my first book, it wouldn't have worked with She Writes Press, but Community Klepto does. So
cool. Well, going back to the book that you started for school and they told you to go a different direction, did you ever pick that project back up and
it's
make it
still
work?
in a drawer.
Oh,
But I think about it all the time because I still think it would be a good quasi thriller story. I haven't written a thriller before, but that's kind of the kind of book it would be. And yeah, I've thought about it a lot. I still, it was going to be set in Vanuatu. So anytime I ever see anything about the country of Vanuatu, I'm like, oh yeah, I should pick that back up. But knowing me, I'd probably look at it now and look at my 20-year-old self and be like, ugh, this is terrible.
what other jobs did you have while you were waiting to bring your projects to fruition and get them to be that book? Have you always done writing projects for income, or were there other things that you did?
I've done a lot of things. Some of the funnier, like writing related jobs I've had. I did have a freelance gig for a while with a company that is like a online dating concierge. So I wrote other people's dating profiles and also wrote like messages back and forth to their matches.
What?
So that's definitely the weirdest one I've ever had. And if you don't believe me, I'm in the Financial Times in 2011 or so, where I'm talking about being the love letter ghostwriter. So that's the weirdest one, the one that comes to mind. I was also a tech writer for 10 years. After I got out of college, wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my creative writing degree. I thought, the advertising would be something that I would get into, but I didn't really want to get into it. It just seemed like something I could do, to support myself. And ended up getting an internship as a tech writer. So in software, I've always been in software. Now I'm a software tester when I'm not writing my books. Let's see, what other funny writing gigs have I had? Obviously the one that sticks out is the one with the online dating assistant.
That I have never heard of that before. That is pretty interesting.
It's hard to talk about yourself. And, I think that job has actually come in handy a lot of times, because when I'm writing pitches for queries, I kind of channel that. When I write back cover copy, I kind of channel the dating profile, because you have to distill, 80,000 words into 3 sentences.
Right.
And that's not easy to do, especially when you're so close to the project, and you have to distill who you are and everything that you've done into, 3 sentences, which is not easy to do. So that job, as awkward as it was, it did prepare me for a lot of other writing endeavors that don't involve just working on the manuscript, because there's so much more to it than that. There's querying, there's promotion, there's marketing, and all that people who like to sit in front of a computer and write a manuscript like I do don't necessarily enjoy. But it's, you got to take the bad with the good, and that's the part of it that I don't enjoy, but it's a necessary evil.
Right. You got to be the team, build the team, all the things, do all the things. When you were in school, did you ever have a moment of panic where you thought maybe it wasn't going to work and you needed to change majors? Or did you always know, no, I want to find a way over, under, around?
I actually panicked backwards. I started out as a major in education. I thought I would teach high school English. And then I did my first in-classroom observation and realized that even when I was 19, I didn't really like being around teenagers. So at that point, I was going to school in Bolivar at the time, and decided to switch majors to creative writing. My parents were really cool with it. Not that they were paying for it, so it didn't really matter what they thought anyway. But, they kind of told me, you've always been a writer, and this world is always going to need people who are articulate, can research, can communicate effectively. So, even if you don't ever make it with writing books or writing newspapers or magazines or articles, there's always going to be something out there for you. And I think that's true of any writing field. Even if you're just doing people's online dating profiles, there's a market for that too.
What's something that you do so much as a writer that someone who is not a writer would be surprised to believe you do so often? Like, for example, you said research or something like that. What's something that people would be blown away to know that you do so often?
I think writers kind of live in their heads a lot. So we'll be at a stoplight and somebody will pull up next to us and we'll start to make up a story for that person that we've never met. That's one thing that I definitely do a lot of. And it's also something that happens when I'm in the car. I don't get a lot of quiet time to myself, except when I'm going to pick my kids up from school and I'm in the car by myself. I'm listening to a book or I'm listening to music, or sometimes I just listen to silence because I just need 10 minutes of silence. And that's when all my good ideas for writing come to me at the most inconvenient time, is when I'm driving. So I have a dry erase marker in my car. And when I have an idea and I get to a stoplight, I'll jot that idea on the window. So
on the window. Oh my gosh, that's a cool idea.
You gotta do what works. Yeah.
Okay, so when you're not in your car using the window and dry erase marker, how do you track your thoughts and your ideas?
I kind of don't. I'm really more of a pantser. I'm not a big plotter. I kind of start out with an idea of, I know where I want the story to eventually go, and I just kind of let my brain take me there. Okay. With Community Klepto, at the end, I had to kind of just make notes of all the chapters that I wanted to include and put them, I just wrote them out on Post-its and put them all on a wall, and eventually was okay, this is the order I want them to go in. So I lined them all up, and that was how I finished it. Because I was I want to include a chapter on her being in a yoga class. I want to include a chapter on her being on the treadmill this day. I want to include a chapter on rec league dodgeball because I was doing that at the time also. That's kind of how I kept track of that. But as far as other things, I definitely just, as ideas come to me, I'll sit down and start to write it. And sometimes I get half a page in and realize, nope, this isn't going anywhere. And that just goes in the drawer until one day I decide to take it back out. And sometimes I don't ever, like with that project that I had my senior year of college.
Well, let's talk about how your life crossed with the character in the book. You talked about running. I think running is a great teacher, and I find it in several aspects of my life. So, how did that all tie up for you?
Well, I get asked all the time all the ways that I am like my character and not like my character. It is fiction, so the narrator is not me. But I did start this book when I was living in Kansas City and training for my first marathon. It was the and last marathon, as it turns out. It was the first time that I had ever belonged to a gym, because like growing up in Buffalo, we didn't have, a fancy Lifetime Fitness at our disposal. But I had done a fair amount of running, because running is one of those things that you can do anywhere. You don't have to have a gym membership or any fancy equipment to do it. You just have to have a body and a pair of shoes, basically, until you injure yourself, and then you have to get more advanced equipment.
Right.
But it was the first time I had ever belonged to a gym. And when it was too cold to train, I would have to go to the gym and run on the treadmill, and I absolutely hated it. But it gave me a lot of time to kind of be in my head and observe the people around me. And when I was observing the people in the gym, I noticed that people would just kind of leave their valuables like laying around, not just like car keys and jackets, but like iPads, their backpack with their work computer in it. And, I just got to thinking, what if not everybody who goes to this gym is an honest person who understands the social contract of, I'm not going to steal your stuff. And that's how I got the idea for Anne Josephson and Community Klepto. It started out as a short story that was just a scene of her on the treadmill, and the guy next to her on the treadmill chats her up, and she doesn't want to engage, doesn't want to talk, because I don't know about you, but when a man comes up next to me on a piece of equipment, I just kind of like, please don't talk to me, please don't talk to me, I don't want to engage. But she does in this case, and that's how the book evolves.
So, has running stayed a part of your life even a little bit, or are you just like done with it?
I'm not done with it. My body is, but so after I have done one half marathon since my full marathon, but a host of hip and knee issues that just keep coming back. Now my running shoes have turned into walking shoes. I still go to the gym 3 times a week. I do kickboxing on Mondays. I did it this morning. My abs already hurt from it. I do bar classes. That seems to really help with the hip strength, to keep my hips strong so that I can run. But then once I start picking it up and start to really get up there in the miles again, that's when my hips are like, no, what are you doing? We're too old for this.
Stop it. So, do you find though that walking and physical activity sparks your creative mind and kind of just cleans out the clutter?
For sure. I always say that because I'm in my head so much as a writer, like being in my body is the only way I can get out of my head and feel my feelings. In fact, I have an essay coming out for Zibby Meg here in a couple of weeks about crying in pigeon pose, because like that's what I do. Like I feel my feelings when I'm working out, and that's when like I'll just start bawling in the middle of class for no reason. And I'm not really known for being emotional in my personal life, so it kind of freaks people out when they see it happen. So that's why I like to go to the gym with a bunch of strangers instead of people who are like, hey, let's go to a yoga class together. I'm like,
Let's not. What kind of advice would you give to new writers or writers maybe stuck on getting that next project going?
I think that the biggest piece of advice that I would give to writers is that you can't take any one piece of advice as Bible. Like there are people who will say you have to write every day if you want to be a serious writer. I don't write every day. It doesn't fit into my lifestyle. I have a full-time job and 2 young kids. So, my writing time is a few days a week after they're in bed. Or people will say, you have to write first thing in the morning. Well, I mean, none of that's going to fit into your lifestyle. People will say, write what you know. Not everybody writes what they know, and neither do they have to. So I say, you have to follow certain rules with the English language, but rules about craft and practice, you can make those up. You do what works for you.
I like that. Where can people go to get your book right now?
It's available everywhere that books are sold. So your local independent bookstore, definitely try to support them first, because they support their communities and really do their part to uplift authors. Like here in town, my book is at Book People in Austin. In Kansas City, it's at Rainy Day Books. In Springfield, it's at the Barnes & Noble. So you can get it anywhere that books are sold. Of course, you can also get it on Amazon if you like having that package come to your door and don't like to leave your house or put on pants. And then, of course, it's also on ebook. So if you read on your Kindle, you can get ebook, and audiobook is forthcoming. I just have to find someone to read it for me.
I'll nominate myself, put it out there for you.
Cool.
You want to go that route?
We'll talk offline.
We'll talk. Anything else that you want to share that I haven't thought to ask you?
I'll just say that this is when people ask me, who is this book for?
Yeah.
Community Klepto. I tell people that it's for anybody who has a love-hate relationship with the gym. And I certainly do, and I think a lot of people do. And yeah.
Is it got a humorous twist to it too? Because I mean, I feel like you kind of got a little bit of that dark, dry humor towards the gym.
It is a humorous novel, and it does kind of serve to make fun of the kinds of people who you will find in any gym across the planet. But in, a lighthearted way. Like, for instance, in this book, there's, the people who grunt when they lift weights and then just drop them at a completely unreasonable volume. There's the old ladies in the locker room who will carry on a conversation completely naked with each other and not be bothered by that at all, while the rest of us are really uncomfortable. There's the swimmer who, takes up 2 lanes with like doing the butterfly when people are trying to get in there and just do their aqua jog or whatever.
Right.
And it's just a way to kind of make fun of people who take themselves too seriously, because I certainly don't.
Self-deprecation is my number one language sometimes. Thank you very much for your time. Come back when you've got your next project and want to talk about it.
Thank you so much for having me. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You do the same.
All right, bye.
Bye.